It was a quiet Sunday evening on September 28, 2014, when Christina Ann Thompson came home with her two young daughters after a nice visit to her mother's house. The family's warmth filled the house as they settled in for the night, not knowing that something terrible was about to happen. As dinner time came around, Christina's husband made her a bowl of cereal, a routine act that would soon take a dark and deadly twist. Christina Ann Thompson was born on September 16, 1978, in Flint, Michigan, into the loving home of Katie and Harvey Ann Thompson. Despite the joy of welcoming Christina into their lives, the family faced a challenging time as Harvey was battling leukemia. Doctors, aware of the potential genetic risks, advised the couple to monitor Christina's health closely. Consequently, Christina spent her early years under strict medical supervision. Tragically, just before Christina reached 9 months old, her father passed away. After Harvey's death, Katie found support in her mother, Catherine, and her mother-in-law. Together, they nurtured Christina and soon found relief as they realized the baby was not only healthy but also very active. A memorable milestone was Christina taking her first steps before turning 1. In 1980, while walking through one of Flint's busy avenues, Katie met James. Born on July 16, 1957, in Flint, James had recently graduated with a degree in science and was working for a company manufacturing mechanical parts. Captivated by Katie's sparkling eyes and bright smile, James was smitten and began a whirlwind romance that soon led to marriage. James quickly became the only father figure Christina knew, and their bond grew strong. James was diligent, intelligent, and organized, balancing his factory job with teaching at the university where he had studied. The household thrived, and their happiness grew in 1983 when they welcomed their first daughter together. This joyous event coincided with a job opportunity for James that required the family to relocate to Florida. Once settled in Florida, Christina excelled academically. Outgoing, kind, and responsible, she earned the admiration of her teachers and peers, while at home, Katie was bursting with pride. Christina's deep love for her family was evident, especially during family gatherings. She cherished visits back to Michigan to see her grandmothers, capturing these moments in albums she crafted herself, fueled by her passion for scrapbooking. James's career eventually led the family to move again, first to Indiana and then to North Carolina. During this time, Christina expressed a desire to become more involved in church activities and receive the sacraments. Her growing faith became a family affair, with weekly church services becoming a routine. In 1993, the family finally returned to Michigan, settling in a house in Davison. Soon after, Katie gave birth to their third daughter. By this time, Christina was in high school, where she took up swimming. Her interest in sports grew, and she became an avid fan of Michigan's hockey and baseball teams, often gathering her family to watch games together at home. When Christina graduated high school in 1996, she chose to enter the workforce rather than pursue a university education. She secured a job at a fast food chain located within a hospital. Despite her youth and inexperience, Christina's natural charm and service-oriented mindset quickly endeared her to both her co-workers and superiors. She enjoyed her work so much that she even considered building a career in the industry. 2 years later, at a party, Christina met Jason Thomas Harris. Born in Davison in 1974, Jason was one of 3 children born to Teresa and James Harris. Although only 4 years older than Christina, Jason had already experienced much, including a divorce and fathering 2 children from his previous marriage. Jason worked as a laborer in a plastic manufacturing factory. Although he had a more reserved and even shy demeanor compared to Christina, this difference did not stop him from pursuing her after their initial meeting. Over time, Jason won Christina's heart, and in 2003, after 5 years of dating and being considered the perfect couple by their friends and family, they got married. During the wedding, Christina's sisters witnessed her overwhelming happiness. One of Christina's deepest desires was to become a mother, but due to financial constraints, they had to wait for a better time. Finally, in November 2009, their dream came true with the birth of their daughter, Haley. Determined to be the best mother she could be, Christina made raising her daughter her top priority. Meanwhile, her hard work at her job paid off when, in mid-2013, Christina was promoted to manager of her branch, a promotion that filled her family with pride. Along with her new position, she was granted a life insurance policy worth $100,000. Not long after, in October of the same year, Christina discovered she was expecting their second child. However, beneath the seemingly happy surface of their home, Jason was engaging in flirtations through chats, text messages, and social media with various women, including one from Rhode Island whose name remains unknown. When Christina found out, their relationship became strained, leading to frequent arguments. At one point, Jason even threatened her with harm. Frustrated by her constant complaints, Jason confided in his sister Rachel that he was willing to get rid of Christina. Rachel, noticing the seriousness in his expression, later shared her concerns with their brother. However, after reflecting on it, she decided that Jason's comments were likely made in a moment of anger due to their troubled marriage, and reassured their brother that Jason was probably only considering a divorce. Christina, distressed by the deterioration of her marriage, confided in her family about how unbearable her relationship with Jason had become. She also shared her fears with a co-worker, telling him that if anything bad were to happen to her, Jason would be responsible. In May 2014, when Christina and Jason welcomed their second daughter, the ever-cautious Christina prepared reserves of breast milk for the baby, some of which were kept by her mother, who occasionally helped care for the child. While Christina was doing her best to care for her daughters and maintain her performance at work, Jason began to spread false stories. He told his siblings and colleagues that Christina was suffering from postpartum depression and was bedridden. Not only did he lie about her mental health, but he also defamed her, making baseless accusations. Some even overheard him doubting whether he was the biological father of their newborn. Curious and tired of Jason's repeated complaints about his marriage, a co-worker asked why he didn't just get a divorce. Jason replied that divorce would mean paying child support and losing custody of the children. It seems that from that moment, Jason began to formulate a plan to get rid of his wife, aiming to claim her life insurance and possibly receive compensation from her employer. One night in August 2014, after obtaining sedatives from a third party, Jason crushed them into a drink he gave to Christina. However, she noticed a strange taste and discarded the drink after the first sip, much to Jason's frustration. His second attempt met the same result. Determined not to abandon his sinister plan, Jason asked a colleague named David, for a drug that wouldn't alter the taste. However, after Jason explained his deadly intent, David outright refused to help. The following month, Jason, believing he had found the ultimate solution, hired a man to kill Christina, offering $10,000 in return. But just days later, the man was arrested for an unrelated crime. Frustrated by yet another failed attempt, Jason confided in a co-worker named Zachary about what had happened. Zachary, thinking it was a joke, laughed it off, assuming Jason was merely venting about marital woes. However, Jason's seriousness became apparent when he offered Zachary money to carry out the murder. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Zachary immediately cut off the conversation and distanced himself from Jason. Undeterred, Jason returned to his original idea, this time making sure to purchase an illegal opioid, convinced that it could be mixed with milk and go undetected. On Sunday, September 28, 2014, after spending the afternoon at her mother's house so the girls could visit their grandparents, Christina returned home with her daughters. That evening, as they prepared for dinner, her husband made her a bowl of cereal into which he had secretly mixed a narcotic. Unaware of anything unusual, Christina ate the cereal, and within minutes, she began to feel drowsy and went to bed under the influence of the substance. A few hours later, she showed no signs of life. The following morning, Jason acted as if his wife was merely sleeping, dropped their daughters off at daycare, and then headed to work. Later that morning, he sent a text to a trusted neighbor, asking her to check on Christina since she wasn't answering his calls. The neighbor noticed Christina's car parked outside, but after knocking several times without a response, she decided to enter the house. Upon reaching the bedroom and seeing Christina lying in bed, she texted Jason to ask if she should wake her up. Jason replied that Christina was probably just very tired and that he would come home right away. However, as the neighbor moved closer, she noticed Christina's pale appearance and immediately contacted emergency services. While paramedics were on their way, the neighbor also called a nurse who lived nearby. The nurse arrived first and confirmed that Christina was rigid and had no pulse. When the police and paramedics arrived, it was clear there was nothing more they could do. Later that morning, when Jason returned, he entered the house without speaking to the neighbor who had tried to help. Those present noted that he seemed neither worried nor affected by the severity of the situation. When interviewed by the police, Jason explained that the previous night he had served his wife a bowl of cereal. He noticed that she had difficulty holding the spoon and even spilled some of the cereal, so he suggested she go to bed. He claimed that he followed her to bed and that, when he woke up in the morning, he found her lying beside him, showing signs of a restless night. However, since he had to go to work, he left her to rest. A quick inspection by the officers revealed no evidence in the bed or sheets that anyone other than Christina had slept there. Afterward, Jason called his in-laws to inform them of Christina's death. In shock and devastation, they struggled to understand what had happened, as Christina had seemed full of life just hours earlier. Meanwhile, Jason, showing little emotion, waited for the officers to leave, dismissed the concerned neighbors who had come to offer support, and stayed alone in the house. Taking advantage of the quiet, Jason called his wife's supervisor and, while recounting the morning's events, inquired about how to claim Christina's life insurance policy. That night, as on many others, Jason exchanged messages with one of the women he often flirted with. This time, the conversation included details about his wife's recent death, yet the woman on the other end of the line detected no hint of sorrow from the newly widowed man. Later that Monday, as Jason stood by the front door of the house, the neighbor who had tried to help Christina approached him, intending to offer comfort. To her surprise, Jason instead began to speak ill of Christina, prompting the neighbor to leave shortly after. The next day, Tuesday, September 30th, 2014, Christina's family went to the police department, urging the officers to conduct a more thorough investigation, convinced that Christina's death was no accident. It wasn't just her immediate family who made this plea. Jason's siblings also went to the station to inform the authorities about the troubled relationship between Jason and Christina and to share details of Jason's dark intentions. However, since these were merely rumors, the police explained that they couldn't take action without solid evidence. In the meantime, to the astonishment of his neighbors and before the funeral had even taken place, Jason moved one of his mistresses into the house. Shortly after, his older children also came to live there. However, Christina's parents and sisters were unaware of any of this. When family and friends gathered on Saturday, October 4th, 2014, for Christina's funeral service at Katie's request, attendees did not bring flowers but instead made donations to help support her daughters. Just a week after Christina's death, Jason, accompanied by his mother, went to his wife's workplace to start the process of claiming her life insurance. That same day, he also collected a $20,000 widow's policy from his own employer. Despite his ongoing affair, Jason remained in contact with the woman from Rhode Island, and on October 9, 2014, as soon as the funds appeared in his account, he bought a plane ticket to meet her in person. A few days later, before leaving for his trip, he left his younger daughters in the care of his older kids. After a short stay, Jason returned home. That same week, on Wednesday, October 22, 2014, a urine sample led the forensic pathologist to conclude that Christina had died from an accidental overdose, likely due to recreational opioid use. However, no needle marks were found on her body, nor was there any drug paraphernalia at the scene. This report deeply upset and confused Christina's mother and sisters, as they found the hypothesis offensive and completely implausible. Christina not only didn't take medications but also had never had issues with drugs or alcohol. Knowing Christina as well as they did, her family was certain she would never have engaged in such practices while nursing her newborn daughter. Given these circumstances, Katie became fully convinced that her daughter had been killed by someone else, and both she and the rest of the family's suspicions pointed directly at Jason. Determined not to rest until justice was served, Katie took the lead. The grieving mother began tirelessly sending emails and messages on social media to the county prosecutor, pleading for assistance. At the same time, the entire family was careful not to let Jason see what they truly thought of him. Concerned for the safety of the little girls, whom they believed were in danger under their father's care, they made every effort to maintain a facade of normalcy. To keep a close watch over her granddaughters, Katie went to Jason's house every day to take care of them, just as her daughter would have wanted. During this period, Jason seemed increasingly out of control. He had taken to using illicit substances and, as if proud of it, made a habit of photographing himself while doing so. At the beginning of 2015, after testing positive for drugs in a screening conducted by his employer, Jason lost his job. Meanwhile, detectives had been quietly monitoring him for some time without his knowledge. A critical part of their investigation involved interviewing his siblings and former co-workers, which revealed his complaints, schemes, and comments about his wife. One day, when Katie and her husband were visiting to care for their granddaughters, Jason asked his father-in-law to take his laptop home to see if he could fix an issue it was having. James readily agreed to help and, once home, immediately contacted the authorities to inform them that he had the laptop. The police swiftly obtained a search warrant. Upon examining the laptop, the first thing they found was a photo of Jason, apparently using an illegal substance, the same substance found in Christina's body. This accumulation of what they believed to be damning evidence against Jason only deepened the desperation of Christina's mother, father, and sisters. Exhausted by the lack of consequences, they pressured investigators to finally interrogate the suspect. However, when the officers attempted to proceed, they found that Jason had already hired an attorney who blocked the interview. This setback led the grieving family to take further action, this time in conjunction with the prosecutor. In August 2016, their relentless pressure paid off when the case was handed over to the Michigan State Police. Additionally, the family's attorney suggested that pursuing a negligence lawsuit against Jason might be more effective as a first step than trying to prosecute him criminally. After deciding to follow this course of action, on September 20, 2018, Jason was called to testify under oath. The goal was to finally hear, directly from him, the circumstances surrounding the tragic event. During questioning, Jason was asked about his notable concern on the morning of September 29, 2014, regarding Christina's condition. He claimed that he simply wanted to know if she had woken up on time. As the questions progressed, the inconsistencies in his story became apparent. He was then confronted with a piece of evidence he hadn't known the authorities possessed, the incriminating photo from his laptop. However, Jason defended himself by claiming that the photo was merely a way to convince his daughters of the dangers and disadvantages of certain substances. By then, Jason's nervousness was palpable, and in fact, by the end of the hearing, he was ordered to pay Christina's family $2 million in damages. Meanwhile, the criminal investigation continued, and by the end of that year, the police had gathered numerous testimonies. Crucially, Katie provided the remaining sealed and uncontaminated breast milk reserves she had stored in her freezer. In mid-August 2019, the same forensic expert who had conducted the autopsy 5 years earlier was tasked with examining the breast milk samples. He found no trace of any substances. Immediately after, he revisited the case file with its updated information. Ultimately, his new conclusion was drastically different from his initial one. In his revised report, he asserted that Christina's death had not been an accident, but was instead the result of actions taken by a third party. As a result, on the morning of Tuesday, August 27, 2019, Jason was arrested and immediately transported to court. There, in the presence of his lawyer, the judge charged him with first-degree murder, solicitation of murder, and delivery of a controlled substance capable of causing death. He was denied bail. Jason, however, pleaded not guilty. In a subsequent press conference, the prosecutor provided a detailed statement on the factors leading to the suspect's arrest. He stated, "It appears that Jason has been living a lie. We believe he laced Christina's cereal and milk with heroin on that fateful morning, after obtaining the substance from someone he thought wouldn't suspect his intentions, much like he had tried to do with his co-workers previously. Finally, after a thorough review of all the forensic evidence and reports, the forensic doctor revised the manner of death to homicide." Jason's trial took place in November 2021. The prosecutor led the case, focusing on convincing the jury that Christina, a devoted mother, wife, and diligent worker who was robbed of her life, was never an illegal substance user. In addition to testimonies from co-workers, family members, and friends, the prosecution heavily relied on the expertise of a forensic pathologist and a toxicology specialist. Both experts testified that it was practically impossible for such a high level of opioids to have entered Christina's system without external intervention. They also pointed out that no drug paraphernalia or residue was found at the scene, which is typically present in overdose cases. As a result, on November 17, 2021, The jury found Jason guilty on all charges. 3 weeks later, on December 10, 2021, Jason was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.